Welcome back to Dragonwings, everyone. We're going to be starting back up on page 110 near the bottom. To recap what happened last time, there is some serious drama going on with Black Dog. He is back in the company and he swears he's going to do better, but he gives that about a month before he starts obviously using opium again and starting to get kind of mean again. And one day, he and Moonshadow are alone, and Black Dog decides to beat up Moonshadow in a really scary moment and steal the money. So now not only has he beat up somebody in his family, he's also stolen money from his family. So all the guys in the company are trying to figure out what to do. Windrider obviously wants to get revenge for him beating up his son, but everybody else in the company are trying to figure out the right way to handle it, because Black Dog is still family. But as we left off here, Lefty is blocking the door so that Windrider can't leave, obviously to go get revenge. And the last thing we know is that Windrider tells Moonshadow to just go to sleep. So we're going to see what Windrider actually decides to do. At the bottom of page 110, it says, I felt rather than heard Father stir. He lit the gaslight, keeping it dim. Half awake, I watched as he rolled off his mat and got dressed, except for his boots. Then he went to our trunk and eased the lid up, piling the things silently on the floor until he reached the very bottom. From this he drew a flat, rectangular package, and he undid the plain cotton cloth about it. The demons called it a hatchet, but it was really a squarish sword, looking much like a cleaver, except that the balance was truer. The light gleamed on the blade. He set it down by the door. Then he found his boots and set them down by his sword. He put his hand on the doorknob and leaned his ear against the door as if listening to Lefty in the hallway. Father straightened and wiggled his shoulders as if to relax them. He took several deep breaths before he jerked the door open. I had never seen Father move so fast. He jerked the door open, and Lefty had time to stare up in disbelief, and as he groped for his club, when Father's fist hit him in the jaw. Lefty's head tilted back sharply, and he had a glassy look in his eyes. As he began to slump over, Father caught him and eased him to the floor. I closed my eyes quickly when Father came back into our room. I raised my eyelids slightly so I could watch Father pick up his hat, boots, and sword in one hand before he closed the door. I remembered again that Mother had told me to look after Father. I scrambled for my things, and with my boots clutched against my chest, I padded after him. I was just in time to see him pull on his boots before he went outside. I counted to 10 before I followed him outside. It was a night when the thick fog drifted through the streets, and I could not see more than an arm's length before me, and everything seemed unreal, as if I were asleep and dreaming. The gas lights showed in the fog only as dull spots of light, like ghosts hovering. A building would appear out of the grayness and then disappear. The whole world seemed to have become unglued. If ever there was a night for monsters to be out, this was the night. I could hear Father's steady, determined bootsteps fading away into the distance. I decided not to put my boots on after all, because the echoes might tell Father I was behind him. I shivered as I walked on the cold, wet pavement. I picked my way through the garbage and over the occasional demon who laid sprawled on the street with the vacant look of a dopey. We went 2 blocks down DuPont Street, and then 1 block up the street of the Tang people into an alley. I crept down the alley until I dimly saw Father's tall figure bulk out of the mist. He knocked at a door. I ducked into a nearby doorway. "Who is it?" a A voice asked. "It is the Wind Rider. I want to see the water fairy." "Who? Some call him the Tiger General now." The little door shut, and Father stood unmoving there in the cold, his collar turned up, his sword in one hand. I stood, shivering, my boots clutched to my chest, afraid to go to him, but afraid to leave. I knew that the Tiger General was the head of the Brotherhood, but how he had gotten that other name, as improbable as it sounded, I did not know. Finally, the door opened, and I saw a small, wizened man. "It's been a long time since anyone used that name." My uncle has a long memory, reaching back to the railroad camps, and a young man who drank the water as the demons did without boiling it first. He told all the other Tang people what a superior stomach he had. He took sick with the cramps and the runs. "That name is the only thing that saved you from being shot down on our doorstep. I wanted to see what fool would dare to use it. I should have known it would be you." "All that's past. Send my kinsman out to me." But the Tiger General stayed where he was. "It's in my mind that you and Black Dog may have been mortal enemies in some former lives and done great harm to one another. You never did get along, from the day you joined us to the day you quit." "Think what you like," Father shrugged, "but I beg you to keep this matter between the two of us." While the two talked, I had watched a shadow creep out of the narrow alley between the sleepers' hall and the building I was in. The shadow ducked back into the alley mouth. In his hand was a heavy pistol. "He beat up my son for the money he had collected," Father said. "Do you protect child beaters and thieves?" The Tiger General considered that for a moment, and then turned in the doorway. "Tell our brother that he has a collar." There was scuffing from within, and then the Tiger General stepped aside as Black Dog was pushed, stumbling, out into the street. He paused for a moment on all fours. His shirt was rumpled as if he had been dragged to the door. He stood up and smoothed out his shirt. "I'm sick. A dopey is always sick," he said to Father. "You aren't too sick to beat up my boy. Now fight," Father said. "But you're armed, and as you can see," Black Dog held up his empty hands. One of his brothers tossed a sword out onto the cobblestones. Black Dog turned to look with astonishment at the others. The Tiger General merely folded his hands behind his back. Reluctantly, Black Dog bent slowly, as if his back hurt. "Now!" he shouted and straightened quickly, raising the sword over his head to throw it. The man in the alley stepped out, cocking his pistol. He began to aim at Father. I threw myself against the man, literally threw my whole body, as if it were only an object, against him. I hit him in the stomach, and he collapsed with a grunt. To my astonishment, I found I still held my boots. I began to use the heavy-soled boots like clubs, flailing at the man. Black Dog cut viciously at Father's head, but Father had accurately judged the length of Black Dog's swing and kept his head just an inch out of the reach of the sword, using his own body to draw Black Dog's swings. It was as if Father were playing with him. Panting, Black Dog cut again and again at Father's head, but he always just missed. Panicked, Black Dog tried one huge, powerful cut and missed. He missed on his backswing, too. Then, Father had cut Black Dog across the chest, laying open the shirt. Black Dog stumbled and fell back with a shout. An arm caught me across the chest, and I was tossed off by the man. My head hit the cobblestones hard, and I lay there, looking up breathlessly at a man in his 40s. In his hand was the pistol, and it was aimed at me. Then suddenly the man jerked his head back, and he twitched. There was the sound of a meaty smack, and he fell face forward across my legs, Father's sword in his back. Father picked up the man's pistol and whirled. The Tiger General and some of the brothers had stepped onto the sidewalk. The Tiger General held up his hands apologetically. "It was supposed to be between just you and Black Dog. And now?" The Tiger General prodded the dead man in the leg. "It is still between you and Black Dog for all we care." He turned to one of the brothers. "Bind up Black Dog's wound and gather his things. He's no longer a member of this brotherhood. I have had enough of his disobedience. He's already been warned of the penalty." The Tiger General turned back to us. "Are you satisfied?" "Is he?" Father jerked his head in Black Dog's direction. "I cannot say," the Tiger General shrugged. "But now when you settle this matter later, it will be strictly a private affair." I slid out from underneath the dead man, staring at his blood that had been spattered my pant legs. Father jerked his sword free from the man's back and wiped the blade carefully on the shirt of the dead man. "Put your boots on, Moonshadow." Father stood up and turned back again to the Tiger General. "The company wasn't responsible. I acted on my own." The Tiger General crossed his arms across his chest. "You'd best get out of our town for a while. Not that I care for the likes of those two pigs, but there are some brothers who would resent the death of a brother, no matter what kind of fool he was." "I understand," Father said. Father put me to bed and then began to write a letter. I was so sleepy that I fell asleep before I could ask him why he was writing it then. The next morning, Father left early while I was still asleep. When I woke up, nobody knew where he had gone. He did not come back until around noon, when he walked solemnly over to Uncle. I have already written my wife and mother, telling them about the trouble last night. I have told them we have to leave the Tang people's town. Uncle put down the pair of trousers he had been washing. The steam in the laundry had slicked his hair down against his face. "Where will you go?" "Out there among the demons," Father said. "Don't be a fool. There is nothing that money can't fix, even the killing of a brother," Uncle snapped. "What can you do out there?" "I went to see a demon, Mr. Alger, who manages apartment houses. I have a job, cleaning and fixing things in those houses. I can heal sick machines on the side, too." "And where will you live then?" Uncle demanded. "What demon would rent to you?" "There is one demoness. She was once rich, but now she's poor. She lets people live in her house for money. They have a stable that they converted into a little room. I'll stay there with my boy." "You can speak their tongue well enough to collect bills, but not well enough to live among them." "I can speak the language of machines," Father said. "That will get us by." "To hear you talk, you'd think it was you who'd been knocked on the head instead of your boy." "Maybe I have been," Father said. "I feel like I've just woken from some long dream. I can follow the dragon's ways better among the demons than among the Tang people." "That's the real reason," Uncle snapped. "But don't you understand me? It's dangerous out there for a Tang man. Just the other day, some demon boys caught Melonhead in the street. Now he's blind in one eye. And that was just traveling from the ferry to the Tang people's town. He wasn't even trying to live among them." "We won't ever have to travel very far away from our home. We ought to be safe." Uncle waved his hand. "Then go, and good riddance to a fool." He was hurt and angry and afraid for us all at the same time. I don't think he could really understand why any Tang people would want to leave the safety of our town to live among the demons. I suppose it would have been possible to go on living near the sleepers, but it would have meant paying an expensive compensation to them. Money Father did not want to pay. And then, too, I think he truly believed that he could follow the dragonness within him better among the demons. The fact that he was willing to live among the demons was a measure of how strongly he believed. Despite Father's words, he seemed as sad as I was the next day when we left the company. He had gone in the morning to clean up our new home. When he came back in the afternoon, we got ready to go. When he came back, Uncle stayed upstairs in his room while we loaded our possessions into the company's delivery wagon. And then, when the very last box of wires and parts and tools had been loaded into the wagon, Father went up for one last visit to our room. I had stayed downstairs out of courtesy to him. Then the company gathered around us when Father came back down. There were presents, of course. White Deer gave us a little statue of the Buddha to be, a happy, laughing God who would exist in the future when all mankind had been liberated from the material world. Lefty gave us his magnificently written poem, which he could never have duplicate because he had lost his hand. Handclap gave each of us a little charm on a necklace. On the charm was inscribed the name of the demon stomper, who was the most often portrayed as a man in a tattered robe sticking a knife into one eye of a demon while he pulled out the other. It had been blessed by priests back home, the Enlighteners they were called, because their monastery was the place of full enlightenment. Everyone was impressed by Handclap's gift. And then we heard the sound of a door slamming upstairs and footsteps. Uncle had on his best outfit, looking as splendid as any lord. His arms were folded across his stomach, and his hands were hidden in the great sleeves. He hid his affection behind his gruffness. "Well, you young fool, are you finally finished making enough racket to tear down the house?" "Yes, Uncle," Father said quietly. Suddenly, Uncle took a porcelain cup from his sleeve. There was a little bit of dark soil in it. In his other hand, he held some incense sticks. "Here," he said. There is no way of identifying dirt, of course, but we all knew it must come from Uncle's own little cup of soil that he had brought back after one of his trips to home. For Uncle, the soil was very special, being a bit of the Middle Kingdom and home, and more, part of the land which his fathers and the fathers had worked before him. "Put it in front of all your gods and your demon toys and burn some incense in it." Father cleared his throat. "Thank you." "Hear, hear," Uncle said in an annoyed voice. He thrust the cup and incense sticks into my hands. His own hands disappeared inside his sleeves again. "And good riddance to you." He would have turned away, but Father, on impulse, suddenly stuck out his hand. Uncle stared at it for a moment and then, like a demon, took it and shook hands with Father. Then Father shook hands like a demon with all the others, rather than bowing and saying goodbye. He was determined to begin doing things in the demonic fashion. We mounted the buckboard next to Handclap. I sat between him and Father. Then Father cracked the reins on the backside of Red Rabbit, and with a lurch, the wagon set off. I held the cup in my hands, looking at the familiar buildings passing by. Oh, I would be back to shop for things. Father thought it more prudent if I did the shopping in the Tang people's town for a while, but it would not be the same. Most of my day would be spent away from here. I felt Father's hand on my shoulder. He nodded at the cup. "We'll give that a special place." he said kindly. And we'll stop right there and begin reading chapter 6 on the next time we read. Crazy stuff is happening. Can't wait to see how it all turns out.